Generic greetings and welcome back once again to Prison Architect and a new series. Today's beverage is a very standard yet traditional cup of tea, the good old reliable cuppa. So welcome back to Prison Architect, and it's been a while since we've done a full build series, and I thought we would rectify that now. And well, often when we come to do a new series and I ask for suggestions, there's normally three main ones. Firstly, it's a do a gang facility, which we've done several times before. The second suggestion is often do the every prison, so prison with every type of inmate, every category, every room, that sort of thing. Again, we have done that in the past, normally themed around some sort of town or similar, so we have done that as well. And then the third one, which we've never even attempted, is to do a death row only prison. And well, the reason I haven't done that is because it's not technically possible under normal circumstances. You have to have some amount of inmates in the facility. Normally the higher risks the better. You have to have cells and corridors and an execution room all set to death row, and then only then, and that's after you've researched it through bureaucracy, you understand, and then once you've got all of that, you may get one or two death row inmates. I think the most we've ever had on one map was about 4, but we're going to make some tweaks so that we make this series actually possible. Now, technically, it won't all be just death row because they might have the sentence reduced to supermax or high, so we'll have to make provision for that for them to move over. But anyway, this is episode 1 of the series. If you're not aware of the format, basically we talk about what we're going to do the rough planning of the facility, and then we go from there. So if you just want to see building, feel free to skip ahead. It's no harm, no foul. Either way, let's just go over to create new prison. We're going to go with default uniform and default colour. Warden and the guard dogs will come back to. World size is small. Funds is just going to be the default 30,000 generic units of currency. Pretty much default across the board, with plot type of default, weather intensity same, gangs is off, dynamic rotations is off, fog of war is off because it's just easier for you to see things. We are going to put fairly conditions on, so for death row, for example, if you go through the execution process and the percentage is above the threshold, which is default 10% or 5% or 10% if you get the execution liability research. If you go through the process and it's above that and it's found later on that they're actually innocent, then you basically get a strike against your character. If that happens again, you get a warning and say don't do it again, and if you do it again, you end up in your own facility. Actually, you get fired, I think. Anyway, it's a fairly state. Generate forests we'll put on because we can get some wood and sell all of that. Lakes and buildings are off. Warden mode, we have that was the last build series where we had legendary warden mode. We're not going to go down that route again. I'm not going to put on events because subsidence is just an issue we don't want to deal with. Temperature is off, staff needs is off, escape plans I will turn on. Now, death row inmates do not go for an escape. In fact, most of the time they're very, very well behaved considering their circumstances. However, they are not opposed to kicking off and breaking things, but I don't think they actually try to escape. We are going to put on bureaucracy research to unlock everything from the very beginning because we want to make sure that we can get the death row inmates from the very, very start. It's like literally the first inmates we will ever get will be death row, so we want to turn that on. Let's go to DLC settings. Weather intensity and rat infestation is off. Island bound is off. I did think about doing an island, but I think we're just going to stick with standard here. In fact, you could probably do this with just the base vanilla game. I have to go back up to Jungle. Trouble Fever, no. Undead, no. I'm not going to put aging on. I normally put aging on. Since it was added, I normally turn that on, but we're going to leave that one. The rest of it is pretty much all off. Criminal insane off. Transfers off. Yeah, that's fine. So, as for the guard dogs, we're going to go with... where's the corgi on this one? Hang on. Where is the monarch? There we go. We're going to go with the corgi. And then we're going to go with warden. Okay. So we've got the lobbyist. Halves likelihood of receiving prisoners who are violent, lethal, volatile, deadly, and fighting. No. Rita. No. Periwinkle. Guard dogs. Uncover tunnels easier. Don't think we'll have that as a problem. The pacifier is the default one, really. Reduces overall temperature in the prison. The inmates less likely to cause trouble. That's always a good one. Sapphira Aknova, which is you gain resale money on contraband. Hawk Hartman, guards drop staff keys less often. They have more stamina. Slugworth and Hudson is sort of criminally insane stuff. That's your... what pack is that? Let's have a quick look. I can't remember the name of it now. It is Psych Ward, yes. We have the botanist and the ecologist. That is from the going green. We probably will go with green energy because it's just really, really good. We have Captain J. Locks. Minus prisoner refund chance and plus 8% staff stamina. Okay, that's like a more of a sort of default one. I think we'll stick with pacifying for now. Dylan Cook, food cost load and such. We're not going to have many prisoners. In fact, my rough plan is to have at maximum probably 15 death row inmates, and then obviously we'll have provision for if they then have their sentence reduced to sort of supermax or very, very high, whatever it happens to be. I can't remember exactly which one it is, but yeah, we'll have to do that one. So maybe 20 inmates, 20, 30 maximum. That's undead stuff. Slow suppression rate, that's technology stuff, snipers. No, we're just going to stick with the pacifier and monarch. And then what we'll do is go to play. And then immediately what I'll do is pause it and save it and do this. Okay, so this is the save file for the prison that we have literally just created. Obviously, it's got nothing on there other than a couple of trees and a couple of workers. The more you build, the longer this thing will be, and it contains all of the values that the game needs to generate the prison when you save and load it, and it's quite long, and it gets longer as you build and build and build, and I'm not going to pretend to know exactly what all these values do and how they work, and I'm certainly not going to try and explain it. There's a whole Wikipedia article for that, but what we need to do is make sure that the game will give us the death row inmates from the very beginning, because that's normally something that it doesn't do. Now, there are several mods that allow you to spawn prisoners or make prisoners into other categories of inmate. However, doing that doesn't give you the intake money and certainly the money for housing the inmates in the facility. So you might bring in, say, normal category inmates and transfer them over to death row, or like say use whatever mods, but it doesn't give you that money. So it's not really like wholly accurate. However, if we make just one alteration in this save file, we should be able to allow the game to spawn that from the very beginning. So I'm just going to go to find here, and I'm going to type in begin intake, and it goes pretty much right to the bottom here. And this is where it shows all of the values for who's coming in the facility. So you've got minimum, normal, max sex, supermath, death row, insane, and then prisoner transfer. And you can see it says pool. So in the current pool, which is basically we've made the save file. That's all we've done. We've created the facility and then we've saved it. There's pretty much a couple of in-game seconds played on this one. So we've got 2 people in the min sec pool, 6 people in the normal, and then max sec is 0. Like I say, in order to get supermax and death row and the sort of legendary and stuff, you basically need, you know, higher inmates, more inmates, etc. However, if we've got a death row, and I'm just going to type in, say, 50, and we will save that, what happens now is if we load into the game again, it should give us a pool of 50 death row inmates to bring in. Let's see if any of that's actually happened. Okay, so we've loaded the save once again, and we can see that it is completely factory fresh. We've got the workers coming in on the trucks on the right-hand side, as well as the initial building supplies. We have our standard CEO's letter, which we will promptly put through the shredder and ignore. We can see that our default prisoner intake is set to 8 prisoners arriving in just under 24 hours. That consists of 2 minimum security inmates and 6 medium security inmates. However, if we go over to reports and to intake, we can turn those off and then go to closed. However, because we have set to have all of the bureaucracy unlocked from the very beginning and obviously edited the save file, we can see now that death row is going to give us, well, is available of 50 death row inmates. We won't have anywhere near that. I think the maximum we're going to have planned is about 15, actually, but we'll see how we get on. It might be a little bit more, depends on spacings. But yes, we've got death row. And as I said previously, the reason I've done the save file change rather than any sort of mod is because you still get that initial payment of 2,500 as well as the money for, you know, housing the inmates and such. Otherwise, if you just transfer them, you don't get any of that. So it's not like wholly realistic. Not that we're sort of going for that, but anyway. So this is episode 1. If you're not aware of the format, this is basically where we do the planning, and there won't be any building on this one. So no harm, no foul. If you want to skip ahead, then that's obviously fine. A lot of people like to watch the sort of planning and the building and setting out the stall, as it were, to see exactly what we're going to do, and basically you get to marvel at the copious amounts of mistakes I happen to make when doing this one, which is not really much of a change, but there you go. Let me go ahead and set up some things here. I've got storage to go in, I've got exports to go in, obviously I'm moving the garbage and the deliveries, just so we can work out how we're going to plan this one. So I have a rough idea of what I want to accomplish. I want a central corridor, I want basically the execution room in the middle, and then I want 1, 2, 3 wings coming off that, and on each one of these wings we'll have an area that's set to all death row. Most of this will be set to death row anyway, and these will have a certain amount of inmates in them. So I'm guessing 1 at the top and then a couple either side, or maybe we just go right to the end and then have a couple either side, so maybe 4 or even 6. Maybe 6 is probably the way to go. Anyway, we'll see how we get on. There will be probably a lot of wasted space on this. I'm just putting that out there right now, just in case people are wondering. Although we can fill it in with forestry and green energy and that sort of thing. So yeah, that's what we're going to have. Something like this. There's the wings, and then you've got your main thing in the middle. You know, you don't need a lot of rooms because death row inmates basically they only ever stay in their cells. All the food is brought to them, and then basically you have to supply all of the needs. You have to meet all of the needs in that cell. So we'll have a fairly large cell, probably minimum of 6 by 6, probably a lot bigger than that anyway. And then we'll have everything we need in there, and hopefully it'll all be sort of looked after. We will have an area, quite a small area, for any inmates that have their sentence reduced from death row to supermax / high risk, and where possible we will actually transfer those out for the $5,000 costs, but you can only do that once every 5 days. So we'll see how we get on anyway. That's the rough plan. Let's see about actually building this thing. So I need to know the middle, which by default is, I believe, 39, like that. So let me just see if memory serves. Has been a while since we've done a build series. 39 and 39. Yeah, there we go. So that is the middle of the facilities. That's the middle there, and that's where we're going to have the entrance. So I'm going to bring that all the way back to here. In fact, what I'm going to do is I will have a 2x2 walkway around the outside. Not that you actually need it, because to be honest, death row inmates, is, you know, even though their circumstances is quite dire, and there's not very many prospects for them, basically they don't often misbehave. I mean, now and again they might break things, but in general they don't try to escape. They certainly don't do any tunnels or anything like that. So yeah, we don't really need that, but this is just for the sake of completeness. It just fits the facility to have a double wall. And this is going to come to the edge here. So this is going to be the sort of edge wall. And what I want is, I'm going to change this over to pathways, because that's going to be a path. And I want to have a gap of 1. So this is going to be a gap of 1 around the outside here. So we have this will be like a sort of two-tone colour pattern. So maybe marble, and then naturally it's going to be almost certainly green carpet or limestone. Yeah, in the middle there. And the idea is that basically the inmates will go into these cells here, which we haven't actually built. So let's just see. Pathways will be something like that, and then we'll have double door there. And then I could even go for a cell like this, and then make it quite tall. Although I'm feeling maybe we should shift it along by 1. Maybe have it here, and have. Do I want it that size? I think having it that size would probably be a little bit too thin. Whereas if we have it of an internal of, say, 6, that's a bit better. I did say 6 by 6. Let's go 6 by 10. 6 by 10. Why not? So that should be what, 12/8? 12/8. So 12/8, 12/8, 12/8 on both sides. Yeah, okay. So there's that. That would be 1 wing. We need to put in the other wing. Right, what's the measurement of that then? Yeah, this is where we get a little bit of a problem. So how am I going to measure this one? All right, so if we were to go for 2 off this one and start from here, go for 12/8, 12/8, 12/8, like that. Okay. Internals of 4. Internal of 4. Is that right? Internal of 4. Internal of 4. Yes. On this side, 12/8, 12/8, 12/8. That's not right. Now it is. And then this comes down to the middle. And you might be thinking, what's going to be in the middle? Well, you can probably guess what's going to be in the middle. Yes, it's going to be an object of 2 by 2. And, yeah, we'll come on to that later on. Let's go ahead and have in the same on this side. So we're going to bring this down. And I think I'm going to just put that mouse there. And then scroll down so we know they're in the right area. And then it is 12/8, 12/8. You're probably sick of me saying that, actually. And there we go on that side. Bring this down. Measure the internals. It's 4. Yeah, that's fine. So 12 by 8, 12 by 8, 12 by 8. Okay, just going to double check the measurement. Internals of 610, 610, 610, 610. Whoops. And 610. Yes. Okay, so that is basically all of the wings that we're going to have. Now, these are obviously big areas here. There is a huge amount of wasted space, and I acknowledge that, and I accept that. The reason we have this is because there's not much we can really put in there. But we are going to have green energy, we are probably going to have forestry, we do need a staff-only area. All of these spaces will be occupied by some amount of building, so we don't need to worry too much about that one. And, well, if we were to, we could probably make this a little bit more efficient, and this is something that has only just occurred to me, and, oh, actually, this is even better than I thought. Okay, right. If I was to do something along the lines of this, this would be, well, no access, sadly. But I could do that. Ah, no, wait. Now, right, the brain's starting to work now. Takes a while, but it gets there in the end. What we can do, and I was thinking about this, like, what we do need an area where they all have to get to eventually. And obviously this middle bit is going to be where we have execution. You've probably already guessed that. The thing is, we also need an area where they can go, and they can go through the death row appeals process. I'm thinking, what if we have this is death row appeals? This one area here. Okay, now I can't have it like that, because the minimum size for parole is 5 by 5. Yes, it is. That would be a 5 by 5, but I wouldn't be surrounded. Indoors, minimum size 5 by 5 and visitor table. Oh, we may be able to put on either side then. We may be able to do that, because it says indoors, it doesn't say surrounded. If not, it's going to be just that. But that's fine with me. Okay. Over to quick build, no, planning once again. And I'm just going to remove those. I'm going to put the doors in here, and, well, obviously we're going to have the doors like so. I'll put them in just for the sake of, well, frankly, looks. We know where the doors are going to go. They're going to be double doors. We could put solitary doors on, actually, but I like the idea of double doors in the middle. And that's like so. And that's all fine as well. I'm probably going to put in doors there, and doors there. And then have walls, because that gives it a little bit more security, doesn't it? Obviously, we'll have to have automatic door servos, because it takes ages for people to come in from the outside into here. So that's just a little bit more security. Do I want to put them there? Does it look better open plan, actually? You know what? As much as I know it's not as secure, I actually quite like the look of it being sort of almost open plan like that. It's like one big... I mean, obviously they are three distinct separate wings, but there's something about that that's like quite cavernous, almost. Yeah. I don't know, I can always change it. So this is just the sort of planning here. And then this, naturally, is going to be our execution room. So it is a 12, and it's going to be a 12 by 12. So that. Okay. I'm just going to double check the internals. 12 by 12. Naturally, doors will go on here. Objects, you know what's going to go in the middle. And what I've been like toying with the idea of is having in... I don't think I'm going to be able to do it, actually. No, I'm not going to be able to do it, sadly. I would be able to do it if I put it there, though. I was toying with the idea of having an area that's like... This is all like glass panels. But I don't think I'm going to manage it. Because it's going to have to be like so far out. It's going to have to be like that, isn't it? Like that. Have these as glass panels, and then behind these are all of the objects for the seating, like that. But I don't know if it's going to work. Certainly wouldn't work there. What if I was to just bring the walls in? So if I was just to put them... Hang on, let me just remove all of these, because I like the idea of it. Maybe I'm going to change that fencing because it'll look slightly different. So have something like that. You can have it like that if we really wanted to. That's actually probably better. And there's your chairs like that, either side. Yeah, that looks... yeah, I like that. I like that much better. Okay, we're going to go with that probably. In fact, I could even go with a little bit further along. Yeah, maybe something like that. Okay, so we have all of our corridors that go around to here. We've got death row appeals. We've got the actual execution room. What else do we need? Well, truth be told, everything else. So this is going to be our reception. So it's going to be from the middle. Let's just measure 4 out and then do that. That's actually far too big. We don't need anything like that, considering the traffic that we won't have in this one. Let's go with, where is it? Pathways along to there. So the walls will be just 2 across and something like that. What's the internals going to be? 6. That'll be totally fine. And then that'll be all right. And we'll remove this bit here. Corridor, obviously along here. I'll sort that out in but a moment. Actually, the corridor's going to be like that. And then, so that's going to be our reception. So we'll have obviously doors on here, like so. And there we are. So doors along to the access here, into here. And then obviously they come through death row and then into this bit here. So there's a couple of things that we need. Firstly, we need an office area. We need somewhere for officers. That is standard. We also need, if the inmates ever have their sentence reduced, we need somewhere for them to go. And, well, that's going to be probably around here, top and bottom. I'm going to have a corridor that's going to go along. And I'll have... It's probably only be a corridor of 2, maybe. I can't really afford a bigger one, because I will start losing far too much space. This will be like, this is the main area, and then if there happens to be, I'm going to call it overflow for the lack of a better term, but if the sentence is reduced from death row to high/supermax, we will try and get them out of the facility as fast as possible by using the prisoner transfer. You can do that every 5 days. It costs $5,000. I'm hoping that because the programs that the inmates go through for death row appeals, because you can only do that every 4 days, and the chances of them successfully going through that are, well, at best 50-50 in my experience. The chances are we won't get much overflow. But if we do, then this is where they're going to end up. So we'll have the cells here, and it's going to be a 6 by 4 internal, like that. So, actually, that's probably far too... no, it's not far too big, because they're going to have permanent punishments. Yeah, they're going to have permanent punishments in there. And yes, they do have less space than the death row inmates, but that's because, as I said, this is more of overflow. In fact, if I wanted to, I could just do dormitory, couldn't I? Yeah, we're doing that. We're doing dormitory. We're going dormitory. We're going dormitory. That. Something like that. Internal of 10 by 15. More than enough. Same on the other side. I don't even think we need that size. I don't even think we need that size. It's going to go a little bit bigger because I want to just have the 2 gap. Let's have a distance of 8. Gap of 8 in the middle. That'll be our dormitory. More than enough, hopefully. Let's have a quick look. Dormitory. Minimum size 2 by 3, surrounded by walls and doors. Indoors, has bunk beds, all the type of stuff. Toilet and sink, and then obviously we'll have things like prayer mats, gym equipment, TV, phone booths, etc. Because they'll be in permanent punishments. They'll always stay in there and then have their food and stuff brought to them. We won't have solitary because, like I say, I've not made any provision for it. External measurement is 10, so we'll go 10 along to there. I actually even think this is too big, truth be told, for the amount of inmates that we transferred over. Yeah, I'm going to shrink it down. I'm going to shrink it down even further, because if you think the beds, they're only that. So, like, the bunk beds can come along here, and, you know, then the toilets, and that's more than big enough. I can always change it if need be. This is the first this is, you know, version 1. The whole point in this series is to, you know, show the workings. And if I get it wrong, then I get it wrong. And we can always redo it. Internal of 7, internal of 6. So, yeah, that is wrong. So, there we are. So, that's going to be our dormitory. And we will have entranceways in like so. And then it will be doors like that. Doors like that. As I said, this is more of like a case of they're just leaving. So, you know, we're not going to pay much attention to that. If we wanted solitary, I can put a little bit in here. There's obviously space for that. And then, speaking of space, what about all of these? Well, truth be told, I'm not even going to really plan it off any more than say that. So this is just going to be 2 fairly big rooms that are for staff. I'll bring the corridor like that, I think. And this is going to be just for staff. So one of them will be storage. It'll be for security. It'll be for the officers. I mean, the officers can go over here. Again, I'm just going to make a box and say something is going to go there and something is going to go there, whether it be forestry or green energy. You know, that's just something's going to be about. I will put the doors in like so. Those will be staff doors. I don't actually need the double door there. I'll just remove that and put that in there. And that'll do nicely. So yeah, as I said, some of these could be officers, so I can easily do that and have your standard officers like that. A couple on the other side. We can do on both sides, but again, I'm not overly planning that. So let's just have a quick run through. And I know it is different from what we've done previous, but that is the nature of the beast here. So cells, we are going to not have any. Holding cells, same thing. Solitary, no. Dormitory, yes, we've got 2 of. Whether or not those are the right size or not, well, let me know in the comments what you think. Canteen, we are not going to have one because the death row inmates are fed directly into their cells, and the ones in the dormitory will be on permanent punishment, so they'll have their food brought to them as well. We have... where are we at? Kitchen, yes. One of these little areas will be kitchen, and I do stress little areas. We're feeding literally 18 inmates, death row inmates, plus whatever's in the dormitory. So let's just say maximum of 30. It's going to be a very, very small kitchen. Shower, no. Everything's going to be in board. Yard, we're not going to have that. Storage, deliveries, and garbage, we've got. Execution, yes, we have in the middle. Workshop, no. Security, yes, somewhere, again, in one of these wings. We could even put it round here. Yeah, like I say, I think one of these will become officers and security and things like that. Ones that basically you don't need access to regularly. So we might have a staff room at the front and a staff room at the back or whatever. But basically what I'm trying to point out is that like things like the warden, the accountant, they don't need to be here. They can be elsewhere because all they do is work in their office or go to the staff room. So we can do that. That's very easily done. Back to room tab. We are not going to have a workshop, as I said. Officers, yes. Infirmary and morgue. I haven't made any provision for that, but I don't think I really need some because, as I said, the death row inmates don't often misbehave, and when they do, well, basically we can have if we do have an infirmary sit over here, the guys will come along and sort that out themselves. So that's fine. We don't need to bring them over there. Morgue, no. Common room, no. Laundry, haven't made anything for that. Again, I can probably put in one of these rooms here. It needs to be very, very small. Visitation, we're not having. Cleaning cupboard is the same. Kennel and armory, we will have, again, probably in one of these rooms at the front. We have a staff room, probably a couple. A library, no. Forestry, possibly in one of these rooms, but we're already running out of space a little bit. We'll see how we get on. Classroom, no. Exports, we've already got. Chapel, no. Parole, technically, yes, we will have parole here, but it'll be death row appeals rather than actual parole. So there's that. We have in one reception at the front, no mailroom, no shop, no padded anything, no gymnasium, no vegetables or farming stuff. Training rooms, meeting rooms, none of that. Fight club, no. Visitor reception, no. Cinemas, no. So basically we've got, I think, most of the rooms that we need to cover. So, yeah, that is the very first version of our death row facility. We have 2, 4, 6, 12, 18 death row areas. or like cells, and then a couple of overflow areas, which are dormitories for anyone that has their sentence reduced to to not death row. And then obviously, let's say we'll try and escort them out because we're trying to do 100% death row. So there we are. The sun is setting on our version 1 of the death row only facility. Obviously, there are some changes and improvements that can be made, and obviously we will go ahead and probably do that. So we'll see how we get on, not just in the sort of time between planning and building, but also during building we can make some changes and alterations. It's all an iterative process, so that's all fine. Just one point of note before we finish off. Obviously, this is a death row facility. Not just a death row facility, it's mainly a death row only facility, and every time we put death row in, and I can obviously see this is the very extreme of that one, people have sometimes something to say about the whole death row process, ethics, everything involved, and you know, I'm going to use the word baggage, but maybe that's the right term, that sort of comes with that. It's a very loaded topic. I can totally understand that. It would be remiss of me not to actually just mention it. I am a firm believer of it's just pixels. Nobody's really questioning, you know, first-person shooters and other things like that. And at the end of the day, it's just pixels. But, you know, I can understand, you know, people treating this with a certain amount of sensitivity and such. But, yeah, we'll do what we can. And, you know, just like I say, we'll go through and see how we get on with this one. And yeah, it's different, and I've sort of put it off for a reason, several reasons, mainly as I said previously, because it can be a point of note and tension for some people, and I get that. And also, secondly, we have had to sort of basically hack the save file. But truth be told, after a couple of thousand hours, not really too sure where else we go with this one. We've got so many different styles of play and everything else that we've done in previous series that this is pretty much one of the few last sort of things that people have requested that we've not yet done. So, well, we're here. Let's see how it goes, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Either way, let me know in the comments what you think, not just on the design, but what we're attempting here. Would like to hear that. And yeah, next episode we'll go ahead and crack on with some building. Hope you have enjoyed it. Thanks very much for watching. Take care, and generic partings.